What unfurls when a gathering of valiant jumpers pulls out all the stops during an endeavor? In the present video, we'll retell a wake-up call, a story that highlights the significant results of dismissing well-being measures, and this specific example, when these jumpers decided to disregard laid-out conventions. Just 50% of them endure the unforgiving circumstances and re-emerge from the profundities alive. The Mount Gambier Cave Dive disaster, which shook the submerged investigation local area, happened on May 28, 1973, at a lowered sinkhole forebodingly named the Shaft. This was arranged close to Mount Gambier in South Australia. The episode killed 4 sporting scuba jumpers, Stephen and Christine M. Millett, Gordon G. Roberts, and John H. Bian. What at first began as a bold choice to wander past on limits eventually brought about bewilderment, exhaustion of air supply, and horrifyingly suffocating. These 4 spirits currently stand as the unpleasant reverberations of the main fatalities of the site, while 4 others managed to narrowly escape the grips of this oceanic misfortune. Arranged on confidential property, the Shaft sinkhole is a safe haven open solely to jumpers, licensed by the Cavern Jumpers Relationship of Australia, or the CDA. When initially found in 1938, it disentangled an underground maze, a complicated snare of passages and loads carved into the limestone. In spite of its engaging magnificence, the construction accompanies its own difficulties, complex ways, barely permitting one individual to just barely get through request, regard which tragically these people didn't. Give the excursion, which had a tragic peak, started on May 26, 1973. Collectively of 9 jumpers plummeted upon Mount Gambier, South Australia, energized by the desire to dig into the profundities of the shaft. The morning of May 28 saw the group renewing their 72 cubic feet chambers at Mount Gambier, prepared to dive into the void. The drop was quick, and as per jumper reports, the aim was not to investigate past the age, a limited and descending slanting prolongation of the cavern on one side of the primary chamber. Anyway, in the dimness of the unfamiliar cave, shrouded in free sediment and limestone rubble, they ended up exploring into dangerous profundities, where the impacts of nitrogen narcosis might actually impede their judgment. Nitrogen narcosis is characterized as an adjustment of cognizance, neuromuscular capability, and conduct welcomed on by breathing compacted idle gases. All in all, it could create frenzy, turmoil, tumult, and even fantasies. The underlying plummet, however smooth, denoted the beginning of a progression of oversights. The shot line didn't run the whole way to the cave floor. There were no additional oxygen tanks, and the jumpers were deficiently arranged with air. The executive's methods, explicit plunge accomplices, were not relegated, and the shortfall of security rules added a component of hazard to a generally confined area. Robert Smith, an accomplished jumper who had conceived the greater part of the plunge plan, had not expected the gathering wandering as far into the cavern as they did. Previous boss director Wallace B. Budd, sorting out proclamations from the enduring jumpers, fastidiously developed a course of events of the occasions that prompted the disastrous destruction of 4 individuals. As the impacts of nitrogen narcosis started to show, Robert Smith flagged his goal to climb. Perceiving the dangers, the gathering anyway decided to press on, selecting to investigate the profundities that enticed Glenn Millett. Watchful about his diminishing air supply, surfaced with Larry Reynolds, while Peter Burr arose with basically no air left in his tank. Glenn Millett, understanding the hazardous condition of the others, quickly prepared an extra tank and dropped again, finding Stephen Millett's light and camera at the edge of perceivability. The scene was tumultuous, upset residue diminished visib capacity to basically zero, and Glenn Millett had no real option except to depressurize and get back to the surface. The enduring jumpers, going to rise at the finish of the arranged plunge, saw Christine Millett and Gordon Roberts endeavoring a quick climb back to the stone heap. Unfortunate of running out of air, They swam straight up, crashing into the vault in the roof with no evident exit prior to flagging. Their problem? They frantically looked for a getaway course. Their lights is madly enlightening. The obscurity. It was the last time Christine Millett and Gordon Roberts were seen together. Their inability to find an exit intensified by reasonable nitrogen narcosis, and the restricted perceivability in the salt-filled climate prompted a shocking end. Gripping each other, they ran out of air and suffocated. Their remaining parts, later found entwined underneath the ceiling vault, a demonstration of the fear they confronted in their last minutes, one enduring detail. Noticing an individual from the gathering swimming lower into the cavern, simultaneously this jumper was John B. Mann, likely affected by serious nitrogen narcosis, and perhaps neglectful of the risky direction he was on. His body was found further than the others, underlining the significant effect of narcosis on decision-making in the submerged domain. The days following the fiasco saw the commencement of search and recuperation endeavors by the police submerged recuperation crew. Anyway, the ineptness of the group for such testing conditions became clear, depicting the activity as an advance-as-you-go activity. Regardless of their earnest attempts, no bodies were found during the underlying quests. In January 1974, a TV film group creating a narrative about cave-making a plunge. The lower southeast was conceded admittance to the shaft. The group sank to a profundity of 50 FD, utilizing proficient lighting hardware to enlighten the cavern like sunlight. Suddenly they found a body in a wetsuit suspended in the haziness. The group, practicing prudence, ceased from shooting the bleak disclosure. The police, educated regarding this disclosure, quickly showed up at the shaft on the morning of January 23, RD 1974. The body was drifting under an edge against the cave rooftop and was distinguished as Stephen Millett. The land owner's interests, combined with the earnestness to recuperate the excess bodies, prompted an equal exertion by RG Mentor and a team of jumpers on spring 9, 1974. Outfitted with preeminent plunging hardware, Coach found a body lying on its once again at a profundity of 185 ft. Further investigation uncovered a second body just underneath it. Christine Millett and Gordon Roberts. A constant endeavor to reposition John Bakerman's body demonstrated testing because of restricted air, and the jumpers needed to yield their endeavors on spring 11, 1974. The remaining parts of Christine Millett and Gordon Roberts were found at a profundity of 195 FD, denoting the third day of plunging. The next morning, jumpers endeavored to recuperate Bakerman's body from a profundity of 215 FD, yet the over-the-top nitrogen fixation constrained the activity to be suspended at 1 month. The last plunge plan was made. What's more, it included 1 day of plunging to get the body's area, involving a rule arrest day for the jumpers to recover from possible opiate impacts, and a third day to recuperate the body on April 9, 1974, 11 months, and 11 days after the debacle. John Hodge Bakerman's body was at last recuperated from the cavern. The long and difficult excursion to carry conclusion to this terrible story arrived at its decision. Post-mortems uncovered the absence of air and terminal suffocating were the reasons for death for the people in question, and as expressed in Stephen Millett's examination report. Anyway, given current realities and jumpers accounts, the coroner presumed that the jumpers exaggerate their primary concern, ran out of air, and surrender to hypoxia. Happens when there's a low degree of oxygen in your body tissues, creating turmoil, pale blue skin, and changes in breathing and pulse. The normal results of deadly suffocating. The inquiry waits might what is going on at some point have been stayed away from, with additional determination and adherence to somewhere safe and secure. Conventions pondering the situation that unfolded in the profundities of the shaft. Sinkhole debacle. it becomes clear that a progression of oversights from well-being measures to opportune direction, added to the unfurling misfortune, the shaft Tin-Ho catastrophe, while a solemn part in the chronicles of jumping history fills in as a wake-up call encouraging present and future jumpers to move toward the profundities with deference, readiness, and a faithful obligation to somewhere safe in the event that you partook in the present video. Make a point to leave us approval and remember to buy into our channel and snap on the ringer symbol to constantly be refreshed with the most thrilling substance when it's free. Gratitude for observing.